The Red Raiders lose at home to the Cincinnati Bearcats by a score of 75-72. In today's video, we'll recap the loss, why perspective is key, and it's not time to panic. And we'll also look at the latest metrics for the Red Raiders when it comes to KenPom and the net rankings. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxwell here for the Back to 12 podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to stay in the know on Texas Tech men's basketball all year long. We'll be here through the losses too, people. We could talk this out together. This could be a therapy session. No need to worry about that. If you want to join one of the most engaging Texas Tech communities here on YouTube, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. All right, pin comment down below. Let me know your one-word describe this number 15 Texas Tech home loss to Cincinnati. Just let me know. One word. Grant McCasland gave his one word, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But let me hear yours down on the pin comment below. Your one word to describe this number 15 Texas Tech home loss to the Cincinnati Bearcats. All right, let's jump into this. Texas Tech loses 75-72 at home. Pop Isaacs leads the way with, that should be 22 at the bottom of your screen, but it says 25. Robert Jennings, I thought, was phenomenal in this game, had a career high in points, 14 with 6 rebounds. Now, this is where perspective is really needed, I think, in this game. And by no means do not hear what I am not saying. This is not the sole reason Texas Tech lost this game, but I do think you need to know this about this game. There were multiple players and multiple staffers that were under the weather in this game, and it was visible from the guys that were fighting through it, including Lamar Washington, Pop Isaacs. You saw Matt Braeuer, one of the assistant coaches, wearing a mask. Lamar Washington flat out missed the game because of how sick he was. You have to understand that there's a bug going around. Now, Grant McCasland, he called this loss unacceptable. That's his one word. So that's how he feels about it. You know how Grant McCasland's going to feel about a home loss because in his introductory press conference, he mentioned how the USA and how he wanted to make the USA the toughest place to win if you're an opposing team in the Big 12. And Cincinnati and Wes Miller's crew, tip your cap. They came in and won the game. But perspective is key in that regard in terms of there's a bug going around right now for Texas Tech. Hopefully they can get right in terms of the health department going into a matchup that we'll discuss here in just a little bit on the video. Now, Texas Tech simply just didn't shoot the ball well from the field, 40% from the field. That's not going to cut it. If you're the Red Raiders. As I mentioned, Grant McCasland did call this loss unacceptable. And what else is he going to say, right? I mean, he's the head coach. Of course he's going to say that. If you lose at home, that's how your head coach is supposed to feel. I mean, what other way is there to say it? So that's kind of the comment I expected from Grant McCasland. But truly for this game for Texas Tech, it kind of felt like they were just up against it all game in terms of, you think about it, they come out of the gate, they don't have Lamar, and that's a key bench piece in terms of a game like this where there's a physical bunch on the other side, and Lamar probably would have been helpful. That said, they were down 13-4. It felt like in the blink of an eye in this game. They battled back, got it within 1 point at halftime, came out in the second half. Cincinnati went on a little bit of a run. Then Pop Isaacs made a three at the end of the game there that put Texas Tech up by 72-71. Then Cincinnati came down, made a jumper mid-range, put them ahead 73-72, and then there was a steal at the very end of it that ended up winning the game for the Bearcats at the very end. It's one of those deals where sickness is definitely part of it. I think even sometimes from a content creator's perspective like my own, I forget, and sometimes it's not forgetting, it's just I don't really know the right word for it other than the fact that you have to remember these guys are human, right? Like you have to remember that. They're not just robots going out there. There's different things that impact these guys on the floor. And to say that that's the only reason they lost, that would be not true. But you have to bring that up in the sense of the team is going through a bug right now, and you could visibly see it even from guys like Warren Washington battling through it, Pop Isaacs battling through it. There was just body language where it's like, oh, I'm mentally exhausted, physically exhausted right now. And it's not just because of this game. It's because I'm battling a sickness right now. But I do think from the standpoint of if you are a fan of Texas Tech, this can still be frustrating from the sense of the week that you had. You had 2 games that were very winnable if you're Texas Tech. Look at the TCU game. TCU shot the lights out, but you were still in it, and you played arguably your worst game. Just play a notch above that, you probably come out of Fort Worth with another top 25 victory. if you just play a notch above what you did in terms of shooting from the field against Cincinnati, you win this game at home. That's obviously not the case. And moving forward, you're going to have a tough task as you've got a really good team on Tuesday that we'll talk about here in just a second. Before we do that, in terms of getting into that game and also talking about the metrics for Texas Tech, reminder, smash that subscribe button, smash that notification bell to stay in the know on Texas Tech men's basketball all year long, right here on the most engaging and the most subscribed to Texas Tech YouTube channel and the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, let's get into the latest Big 12 standings and metric rankings for the Red Raiders. Currently, as it stands right now, Texas Tech is in a three-way tie for second in the Big 12 alongside Iowa State and number 18 Baylor. Remember number 18 Baylor. We'll talk about them a little bit more here in just a second. Number 4 Houston and number 8 Kansas are currently tied for first at 6 and 3. When it comes to key metrics for Texas Tech after this game, Texas Tech moved down to 32nd in KenPom and 33rd in the net rankings. Now, that's not all that surprising when it comes down to it. You lose specifically at home in the Big 12, you're going to have a little bit of a knock. For reference, KenPom had Texas Tech as the 29th best team in the country coming into this game. You lose, you fall down. That's usually how it happens. But it doesn't get any easier in the Big 12 if you're Texas Tech. You go to Baylor, number 18 Baylor, on Tuesday, 8 p.m., primetime, ESPN. And it's going to be a difficult game down there. Baylor starting to get back into the swing of things after they lost 3 consecutive Big 12 games and had a thriller. I mean, an absolute thriller on Saturday night against Iowa State, where the Iowa State player just barely didn't get the three-point attempt off at the very end of the game, which he made, which would have won the game for the Cyclones. Instead, Baylor wins the game. They move into a 3-way tie for second place, as I mentioned earlier, with Texas Tech and the previously mentioned Iowa State Cyclones. It's going to be a key game. We'll preview it here on the channel tomorrow, but that's where things stand right now for Texas Tech. And when you look at it, again, I think perspective is key. I got to go back to this from the sheer standpoint of guys were sick. I'm not saying that's the only excuse. You got to have more out of Joe Toussaint. Simple and plain, right? Joe Toussaint has to be better. I think Joe knows that. He just hasn't been himself really over the past, 4, 5 games. He's got to be better for Texas Tech moving forward, right? Are you going to have this from RJ every night? No, but this is a good sign that, hey, he can play and give you some really good minutes because, again, I've talked about it in previous videos. Warren Washington is on a historic pace for minutes for a 5 spot in the Big 12. I mean, it is nuts how many minutes he's playing, and defenses are slowly starting to figure it out. Tobias Bass talked about it yesterday on the Twitter spaces that I do, and if you don't follow me on Twitter, you see the handle right there at RCMB323. I do a post-game Twitter spaces for every Texas Tech men's basketball game. He brought it up, and it's a good point. He's talked to multiple coaches in the Big 12, one specifically saying that their game plan in a game that they beat Texas Tech earlier on this year was to just physically attack Warren Washington and just make the game physical for him. And that just makes everything easier for the rest of that team in terms of they can pinpoint guys to go after on the defensive end. You got to figure it out if you're Texas Tech on the boards. They did a little bit better of a job against Cincinnati, only losing the rebounding margin by less than a handful. But you have to figure things out if you're Texas Tech in the sense of how are teams adjusting to what we were doing early on and how are we going to counter that adjustment from the said opponents remaining on the schedule. It's going to be interesting. It's a chess game. That's really what it comes down to when it's all said and done. One more time, if you haven't already, let me know your one word to describe this number 15 Texas Tech home loss to Cincinnati on the pinned comment below. And if you haven't already, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to stay in the know on Texas Tech men's basketball all year long. Hey, this is a therapy session again. This is what these videos are for, to break down the game, give you the nuances, but also be there because we're in the trenches with you guys. So if you want to join one of the most engaging Texas Tech communities here on YouTube and the largest Texas Tech community on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay in the know right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.